Common Council meeting in the City of Milton on Tuesday, March 4th, 2014 at 7:02 p.m. I'll ask for confirmation of the appropriate meeting notice.
The agenda was posted at Dave's Ace Hardware, the Shaw Municipal Building, Milton, Piggly Wiggly, and the amended agenda was made available immediately to the press.
Thank you very much. We'll skip over agenda item 2 and move right to the presentation of tenure awards. We have 2 of the 3 employees who are being honored tonight with us, but the 3 who have achieved a milestone in their term of employment with us are Stacy Schultz from our library staff, who's been with us for 5 great years. Jerry Schutz has been with us for 105 years.
Looks great.
Jerry's, believe it or not, only been here 5 years, but Inga did think it was 15 years earlier on today, Jerry told me. And then Michael Griffin, who's been giving the city a good hard day's work for the last 20 years. The city runs only because of the efforts of dedicated employees like this. And so the least of what we can do is offer our appreciation, our thanks, and when that's not enough, then we paperclip gift cards to certificates. So I'd like to present these to Mike and Jerry. Thank you very much.
That's not a trip to Florida or Acapulco or anything.
Not in that envelope. I wouldn't give that away.
Yeah.
We will then move on to items not on the agenda. Representative Ringhand was planning to be with us. I thought she was going to be with us. She appears to not be with us. So if she does arrive later on, I suppose we can give her a couple minutes just to say hello. If anyone else has any other items not appearing on the agenda that you'd like to discuss, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll move on to agenda item 5, which is the approval of the consent agenda. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6 is new business. 6A, discussion and possible action recommending staff authorization to create and release a request for proposals for a real estate agency to market and facilitate the sale of city-owned properties in the Crossroads Business Park.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, at the last Economic Development Commission meeting, the EDC followed a staff recommendation, which was to continue to invest in our marketing efforts to market the city-owned properties in the Crossroads Business Park. The city has made considerable investments in not only planning, but also in land acquisition. And as we continue to aggressively market those properties and those opportunities, Mayor Frazier had a series of conversations with me about the potential of using an exclusive realtor. And what that process would look like is that similar to what someone would do with either a commercial property or a residential property, we would actually list those properties that we have for sale, in particular those properties on the commercial side of Highway 26, which is the west side of the bypass. The primary value that we see in that is that there would be someone dedicated throughout the scope of their days and motivated by a potential real estate commission of 6% to push those properties for sale. It's a unique approach. Going back to 2008, when Mackett was doing the city's economic development, we did have what's known as a realtor MOU, in that if a realtor had found a buyer for a city-owned property, we agreed to pay them the 6%. Most Rock County communities participate in that MOU. What would separate Milton from that is that we would actually have somebody marketing our properties for us. And in that regard, the EDC staff and the mayor felt that the value in doing that would be there would be exposure to markets that right now we don't currently have those properties exposed to. The city has information about our economic development on the website. We've invested a considerable amount of money into planning the Highway 26, Highway 59 corridor. But now it's time for us to sell those properties. And we want to, although we've had some more economic development uptick in the last 18 months than we had in the previous 24, the idea of using a real estate agent to push those properties and to be exposing them to markets they're currently not exposed to, there would essentially be no cost to the city unless the property was sold. And in that regard, I think there's a very good idea in terms of putting out an RFP, seeing if those real estate agencies will submit on it, and then allowing you an opportunity to potentially more aggressively market and presumably potentially sell the properties that we have available in the Crossroads Business Park.
This is for commercial properties, not industrial properties.
That is correct, yes. The industrial side is a little bit more complicated, and there's not as much experience in the real estate community in selling and marketing those vacant lands. And part of that has to do with the complexity of those deals. Some of the issues that were discussed at the Economic Development Commission meeting were if the realtor finds the buyer only, it doesn't work as cleanly on the industrial side because of TIF district incentives. And so in order to preserve the land costs, we would roll in the 6% commission into the deal, if you will. And then so that way the actual land price reflects the use of the realtor, so that the city is not lost and its taxpayers not lost money as a result of using the realtor as part of the process. And so what would happen is land prices already are inflated to reflect the costs of utilities and infrastructure on those already fully improved sites. And then on properties that we would sell with a realtor, we would put that into the negotiation piece for the actual buyer. So there are certain properties that we had already owned out there. There are certain properties that we have acquired. And so if a realtor were to be factored into the equation, we would factor that commission into the deal.
Additional questions or comments or discussion?
This is just for the commercial, and we don't have to pay unless they sell.
Right.
Correct.
How long of a contract are you looking for?
Economic Development Commission talked about 6 months is what the realtor will want, and really, I should take that back. They will want a year. Our recommendation will be to go 6 months, see what kind of activity we get out of it, and then have a contract that would allow for another 6-month extension. I think it would be important, and the mayor and I have had this conversation. In fact, we were talking to a realtor today about another issue out there in the park and the prospects for some different opportunities that are out there. And we need to see activity. We need to see signs going up out there that these properties are for sale. We need to see signs going up when the properties are going to be developed so that people can see that the park is in fact emerging. And so visual of that, very similar to like what we see with Black Hawk Technical College is, sign followed by the construction. We saw it when the YMCA was being built. As soon as that land was acquired and the Field of Dreams went down, there was a sign going up, future home of YMCA. And so in order to, spark that future interest, we need to show people that stuff is happening out there. And a real estate sign indicating to people that, hey, this property is for sale is another way to do that. It's a very inexpensive way to do it. It doesn't cost us anything until that thing actually happens. So 6 months with a 6-month extension is would be a staff recommendation.
Are we gonna look at like real estate firms in Madison or, bigger city that might have more outreach?
The RFP would go to both. So firms that we had talked about kind of right off the top of our, talking out loud and thinking out loud when this proposal was coming forward. Certainly, and I don't want to exclude anybody, but there's local, like Barry Badinger. I believe that's how you say his name.
I think so. I don't know.
Manager.
You must have him in school, right?
I don't know that anybody you haven't taught, Don, so, but yeah, Barry,
He played basketball.
the McGuire Mears firm, Coldwell Banker, is another one that has a lot of good commercial real estate experience in the area. Sarah Investments is a firm that we worked with. We purchased the Dean building from those folks. They're out of the Dane County market. And so we want to make sure that we get someone that's going to focus and is familiar with the Rock County market. But there's also value into, as evidenced by our participation in what's known as MADREP, which is an 8-county regional economic development corporation. And the reason that MADREP would be of value to us is there are certain projects and certain properties that people are looking at in Dane County where the cost of land in Dane County is cost prohibitive for that project to go forward. Land acquisition in Dane County for commercial real estate is as much as 200 an acre. Well, if we're selling property down here for, anywhere between, 40 and 50% of that cost, and in some cases maybe even less, we become a much more attractive site to somebody who can do their business within 35 miles of Madison.
Well, that's why I brought it up, and the fact that the bike has to be done all the way. People will drive, live in Madison and drive here. If the margins are correct, they are right.
That and being out in front of the 3990 expansion where that's gonna be 6 lanes. People can say, well, if I can get what I need to get there within that small window of time frame, our land is less, our schools are great, our quality of life is high. That's what we need to be marketing as we move forward. The issue that staff has with this, and we'll, we hear this time and time again, but there's only 2 things that are really finite, and that is the amount of money we have in the budget and the amount of time that staff has in a day to get to all of the different things that we have to do. And so if we can outsource things at little to no cost and still get the desired outcomes that we want, that's why we think this is a good approach to do that.
What other municipalities do this?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm not known any that have tried it.
Doesn't hurt to try,
No,
Yeah, it doesn't.
Well, for us, with the staff, we're limited with staff.
right?
We have to try it. We want to see it feasible. For a year, it doesn't hurt. But a year.
6 months.
Well, the first and foremost thing we would do is, we wanted to bring it up to you conceptually in terms of it's an idea. If you like the idea, we'll draw up the RFP, bring it back to you March 18th for approval to send out, and then hopefully have it ready for, an interview process or selection of a realtor in April. That's kind of the timeline. So before staff put the work into putting the RFP together, I want to have the conversation with the council to see if you like the idea. And if you do, then we'll get going on the work on it and get it out.
I like the year, 9 months.
6.
So the recommended action tonight is to authorize staff to put together and release the RFP for the exclusive real estate agency to market city-owned sites in Crossroads.
For a 6-month contract.
We can drop the RFP if you want 6 months, and then
That's what you said.
right.
Yeah,
For possible renewal.
Yeah, possible
Yeah, possible, right.
extension.
See what
Okay.
they come
See
up
what they do.
Okay. Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6B is discussion and possible action recommending council adoption of a TIF district policy for the city of Milton. Before Jerry jumps in, I'll tell you, this is something that I am really proud that our staff was able to put together. This is an incredibly complex process. One of the only incentives that's available to municipalities to incentivize economic development, and we've really been operating under a very outdated model, an old ratio of how much land we give for how much value. And so what this process now represents is one of, if not the most sophisticated, but still accessible TIF policies in Rock County. Some folks have actually already been asking to copy it. And Jerry, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This was a concept that after Mayor Fraser took office, we talked about recognizing how far that we had come in the TIF districts and how much more we had to do while they're still open. And so we connected with folks from MADREP, who had also then sent out an email blast throughout their entire region, an 8-county region for TIF district policies, as well as to the Wisconsin City Managers Association out on their website. So we saw TIF district policies from Sun Prairie, from La Crosse, from Rothschild, from the city of Oshkosh, and we kind of put all that together and sat down with Inga and then said, okay, what are the things that are good about some of these other communities' policies, what are the things that we need in terms of flexibility and maintaining our policy, and then really creating a document that could help all of you as elected officials, the members of the Community Development Authority, take a look at projects instead of, rather than just necessarily the property value that they create, but also the value that they create within the community. And within that is that point system that you see within the policy, so that whatever incentives you choose to give equate the overall community value of the project, not just the mathematical value in terms of its property value. The mayor had talked about, using an outdated formula, and that's very true. When we started our process, and then we're outsourcing economic development to MACIT, it was a very mathematical formula in that $300,000 of assessed value got you 1 acre of land for $1, and you've heard me say that a lot. But where the challenges were with that is when those TIF districts were created in '04, '05, '06, and '07, when they were finalized, they're now in the second half of their life. So the projects that we have coming forward have to have more property value if they're going to be associated with any debt, and they have to create more community value, meaning either more jobs or a combination of property value and jobs, and auxiliary potential, meaning that what might this business be bringing to the TIF itself in terms of other additional complementary businesses. Example being, if a couple of restaurants go in or if a hotel goes in, that might get more points in the policy to come in, or council may wish to throw more incentives their way rather than a project that is maybe going to be 1 or 2 jobs and lesser property value. So it allows you a greater level of flexibility than the old policy, but at the same time, it also creates, from my perspective, a much more detailed explanation to applicants. Sometimes people don't fully understand TIF, and so when we have someone coming in and say, hey, I want some of that free money, I want some of that free land that the city gives away to do business, and we explain to them that it's not free, that there are associated expectations that we place on creating new property value, creating jobs, and those are directly tied to the statutes that allow us to use TIF district. And so I echo the mayor's sentiments. It was a tremendous amount of effort put forth by staff to roll this out to the point where James Otterstein at our Economic Development Commission meeting had said, I'd like a copy of this because I want to use this as a template for other communities to follow, because it has a lot of good information in there about what TIF is for and what it's not for. And so staff recommendation is that the council adopt the new TIF district policy as presented.
Once this is approved, will it go on a website?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think there's a real lack of understanding of what TIF even stands for in the community. And if there was a way to put an article in the paper or whatever, to talk about this discussion and come up with maybe a couple sentences that just give you an outline of what TIF is, and then refer to the city website if anybody wants to take the time to read that 18, 19 pages. And it's complicated. I mean, I don't know how you come up with a couple sentences to describe it, but you're the professional.
Considering there are graduate school classes on
Right.
understanding it, it's a hard concept to break down. But yeah, I agree. I think that's very, very important because we talk about it even internally within the organization. People didn't understand about how come we're doing A, B, and C and making adjustments here when we're spending, $600,000 to buy land in the industrial park. And they don't understand that they're different funds, they're different, the different processes, and so, yeah, I think the more that we can communicate what TIF is for and how it's used, the better it is for not only the development community, but for the community at large. Because it's just not all one set of taxes that comes in and one set of money. There's different funds, and how it works is very different. And what some of the restrictions are on it too. Sometimes people just think it can be used for anything, and that's not the case.
Far above the business community, each individual taxpayer wants to know how this money is being moved around.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something we can start right away next week with the adoption of this policy, because I think it's important that the community understand what the end goal of it is, and that is creating more property value in the community, to creating more jobs, which have auxiliary benefits, and the fact that a joint review board, the 5 different taxing jurisdictions, are involved in the creation of this, the amendment of it, and then at the end of the day, when it closes out, how much different and how much better the city is as a result of that. I mean, there are, right now, TIF District number 6, that alone is bringing in over $800,000 of increment annually. And so that property value would not have happened if not but for TIF District. And so all of the infrastructure, all of the other things that go in there, and then when it closes in 2024, all of that new property value will be redistributed to the 5 taxing jurisdictions. So that TIF District number 6 is a perfect example of how it's supposed to work. So yeah, having this better policy is, I think, not only a good communication document, but it also, from my perspective, I like it because the application process allows us to separate at the staff level those projects that have the potential to more likely utilize those tools, and allows us to promote some other tools that we have available to us, from facade grants to the small business development loan program to all that stuff. But at the same time, it also potentially separates those projects that don't have the same level of viability or likelihood of success because they lack detail. And so if someone has to put this level of energy and effort into filling out the application and kind of show us what their plan is, so to speak, in a greater level of detail, that will trigger a staff response, whereas right now, it's a phone call and somebody wanting to have a conversation. And we'll still do that, but once we give them this and say, okay, sounds like a good plan, now you've got to put a little bit of skin in the game, you got to tell us what you're going to do and show us that you're for real. That allows us to maybe better manage our staff time on some of the, there are many conversations that we'll have with projects that don't even necessarily get to this room because they kind of fizzle out even before they get any legs underneath them.
Should we just quickly read through the whole thing then? Yep.
Royalties, sure.
Non-levy revenue.
You bet.
So, I mean, I have a question. Did we pay Mad Rep for their assistance? So how did we get them to do this?
They want us to be an active part. They want to promote economic development in the 8-county region, is what they do. And so it's a collaborative effort of all sorts of different communities. And then they have some other opportunities that they promote. They do, very recently, we met with somebody who wanted us to buy an ad for $3,000 or $4,000 in a magazine that they put out in Site Selector magazine. And we just didn't have the funds in this budget to bring it forth and say, we think it's a good idea, but in the 15 budget, maybe we will. So they promote the entire region, and they also look for best practices. So when their vice president put out an email and said, hey, we want to get TIF district policies from all of you, because we're looking for some really good ones ourselves to give to other communities to be successful. Sun Prairie is a community that's had some great success using TIF districts. They've got an exceptional policy, so a lot of what you see in ours is a reflection of theirs, and as does the city of Oshkosh, have a very, very strong TIF district policy. Most in Rock County, not so strong yet, because we kind of take it as it comes. And this allows us to, be a little bit more selective in the process, while at the same time better communicating all the tools that we have to offer.
So, is Mad Rep something that you pay a fee to be a member of their organization then?
You just tell them you want it. It's I would equate it to although it's not exactly the same, professional organizations for professionals in the economic development field. So we don't have an economic development director. So we ask them to help us with putting as much information as they can on their site. Exactly how they financially work, I really don't know.
That's why I was wondering.
I'm not familiar
I
with.
guess maybe they sell ads.
Yeah, maybe with the specifics, but I know they used to be Thrive.
They did used to be Thrive. There's just been some other counties that won't have anything to do with them, and that's why I was wondering what our association was with them? Because I hadn't heard of us associating with them before.
When Todd was here, Todd is a huge believer in Thrive, and he still goes to all the EDC or Economic Development Professional events. But we didn't really do much with them. They went through a transition probably 12 or 18 months ago, probably 18 months ago. It used to be the president of Thrive was also the president of the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce, Jennifer Alexander. And then she retired, and that's when Paul Jaden became the president, and they really refocused. They changed their name. They started to become truly more regional. But up until that point, yeah, Greene and Sauk counties, especially didn't really have anything to do with them. But as far as putting this policy all together, MadRep just sent out the request for other people's TIF policy and then sent them back to us. Staff put this together. This is not something that MadRep physically, wrote or anything like that. So there's a couple of things that hopefully folks have had a chance to look at. One of the biggest changes is that we have created in this proposal a cost recovery mechanism, a 1% application processing fee. Certainly, everything in this plan is up to the council's discretion and input from the EDC and the CDA. But that 1%, that is different. Up till this point, there's been no application fee, nothing. Every time someone wants us to look at TIF, we essentially finance it through the general levy and through a little bit of TIF, which is a fine way to do it if things pan out. But if they don't, then it starts to be a bit of a drain. So that is something that's new here. The other good thing, though, I did allude to is the flexibility that it allows the council, which is something that we should have. We can spend forever trying to come up with a policy that quantifies every little nuance of every development. But in the end of the day, when a proposal is presented and the information that's included in this application is very thorough, we'll have a good worldview so that the council can make an educated decision on what level of incentives, if any, you want to apply. The policy is really more of a guide in that sense, a benchmark. So those are a couple important changes I wanted to make sure that we highlighted.
Staff recommendation is that the council would approve the TIF district policy as presented.
You made a motion already, didn't you?
Started to. I'll move to approve the TIF district policy for the city of Milton.
No, second.
That's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6C is discussion and possible action regarding a memorandum of understanding between the City of Milton Public Library and the Arrowhead Public Library System.
Thank you, Mayor. The council packet memo is relatively self-explanatory. With the Arrowhead Library System coming into the Shaw Building in June, we met with their executive director, and Lisa Brooks, the executive director of the library. Steve Platter is the ALS executive director's name, and he just wanted to work out some of the operational logistics that were not identified in the lease. And so we thought we could do that through a memorandum of understanding. Specifically, there are going to be some new and better advantages that will come at no cost to City of Milton taxpayers. In particular, it has to do with broadband internet and fiber actually coming to the Shaw Building. So lo and behold, right after we're leaving, all of our internet and Wi-Fi connections are going to be much better. So I know that's frustrating for all of you with iPads and stuff from time to time, but it will be better, it will be faster, and it will be at no more expense to the City of Milton taxpayers because it will be on their system. In exchange for that, Arrowhead is asking to have access to the City of Milton's network, and that has to do with the broadband connection itself. We did say that will have to be in accordance with the City of Milton's electronic communications policy, which is in our employee handbook. Steve was fine with that. They have the same similar policy as it is for their own use of the network. But what that has to do is integrating both systems into one network. With the new city server, that will not be a problem in terms of space and capacity, because it will just have to be essentially more so accessed. And so the other logistical component was that of phones. We'll be leaving 4 phones that are in this building here for them to use. They'll be responsible for all the lines themselves. And so The actual devices themselves will be the older ones that we will not take with us to the new building. And those phones will stay here. The lines themselves and all the costs associated with that will be ALS's responsibility. Other than that, the only substantial thing that was talked about and referenced when their lease and coming over here was the awning. That we'll want to have an awning that will be identifying them as Arrowhead Library System instead of just the Shaw Municipal Center. So they'll get cost estimates for doing that. From a budget perspective, we'll want that to be a city-owned thing because we also want it to be done with your exclusive control. And so in terms of cost, the Shaw Building Maintenance Fund has funds to be able to do that. We don't have cost estimates yet, but we anticipate it to be a few $1,000s. And then once done, all the maintenance on it would be their responsibility. So, staff recommendation is to approve the memorandum of understanding between the City of Milton Public Library and the Arrowhead Library System.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On the amended agenda, item 6D is discussion and possible action regarding Resolution 2014-04, authorizing execution of warranty deed.
Thank you, Mayor. I will give the overview of this, and then if there's any further questions, get it over to Attorney Schrader. But essentially, and I apologize for having to amend the agenda and putting this on here, but with the closing of the property that we are selling to Freedom Graphics in the Crossroads Business Park, there are some documents that the
Bless you.
bless you, that the title company representing Freedom Graphics, the option that they exercised allowed them to pick who they wanted. That did not get to us until very late prior to preparation of the agendas. In order for us to sell the property to them, we need to have the council's authorization to execute the warranty deed over to them. So it's a standard protocol associated with a real estate transaction, but obviously because of the magnitude of the transaction and the $85,000 that we're getting for selling the just over 2.5 acres to them, wanted to make sure that the council had authorized the mayor to execute the document. Did I miss it?
Nope, that's correct. It's just a standard provision for real estate transactions involving either municipality or if it was a corporation, they'd ask for something similar from a corporation.
You need a motion. I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to execute the warranty deed.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7A, next meeting is Tuesday, March 18th, 2014. Mayor, alderpersons reports. Any alderpersons reports?
My pipes haven't frozen yet.
Well done. Well done. All right, we'll move on to staff reports. City Administrator.
Couple of quick things. There was an article that was in the paper about DOT access and the Highway 26, Highway 59 corridor. I am pleased to report that we had a very productive meeting. The DOT was very responsive, and their director of the Southwest region, a gentleman by the name of Joe Olson, and their staff from their access department came down today and met with Mayor Frazier and I and a prospective developer who's looking to do something in the park. It was a very productive meeting for which they are taking it to what they call their Access Advisory Committee tomorrow. And they're going to discuss what we are seeking in terms of access on Sunnyside Drive with their council tomorrow, and they will send us an email update with what our options are with respect to getting access restrictions lifted. And so, Mayor, I don't know if you felt any different, but I just think it was a very productive, very good meeting, for which the developer also left, and everybody left shaking hands, saying thanks for your work on it. We'll get back to you tomorrow. So as we learn more about what the DOT has to tell us, we will make sure all of you, and at the March 18th meeting, that the community is fully informed on where we're at with that.
So what do they have to do, the group that have to do it? How many? They have a committee that has to approve it?
An easy way and a not as easy way. The easy way, there's this access review committee that will meet tomorrow. That committee has the authority to lift the access restriction. The issue is that when this was set up 10 years ago, 8 years ago or so, people who had these positions signed off in the city, signed off on an access restriction that limited access to the very back corner of that lot.
What was the purpose of that?
Don't know.
I'm
Don't
just
know.
wondering.
What would make, that doesn't make any sense. What would make sense is having the access point mid-block, or no access point at all, and having it all come in from what they call rear frontage. So what we're hopeful will happen is that the committee will approve lifting the access restriction, and then will essentially just transfer the access point to the point that the developer wants it at. That will save the developer the cost of having to buy access. Essentially, there's a long process that he might have to go through where he would have to buy the access real estate from them, since it is part of state-owned land, that access point. We're hopeful that won't be necessary. The folks from DOT felt like it was more likely than not that this could be worked through much more easily than that, but it's really up to that committee. That committee meets every other week, so it's a fairly good standing committee of folks who know what they're doing. And I think we left that meeting feeling like the folks from DOT were definitely going to go in there and advocate on our behalf, and on behalf of the developer. So hopefully we'll get a call tomorrow around 3 o'clock or so, saying that all's well, and we should be good. But regardless, the project seems to be still on course. Certainly the relationship with the DOT is a good one, especially with Joe Olson, who we've worked with quite a bit over the last 12 to 18 months or so. A very good guy, and definitely a problem solver, a solution finder.
He was the person who we worked with, as well as Rose, the deputy director, in terms of when we sought additional signage pointing to Milton. He was the guy that pushed that through and got that done. And so he is a guy that can get things done for us, and
Sounds like he might, then, if you got that, then you might be able to get this done.
The only other couple of relatively quick updates that I wanted to touch base on is that you'll see the continued progress on the police station, City Hall building. We'll have another construction meeting tomorrow, for which, and I feel like I say this with every time we talk about that project, weather dependent, we'll know more definitively what the planned completion date is. So that project continues to move along. Some great new information coming out about our community build playground, so stay tuned to the press releases on that. Parks and Recreation Commission is doing some great work with that project. A lot of good community input and some designs that are going to go on the city's website later this week, and some fundraising opportunities, again, for people to be a part of getting that park to look how the community wants it to look. So that's an exciting project as well. Nothing else. That's it.
Don, are you doing this fundraising?
Attaboy.
Gosh, 'cause I didn't think you were doing too much of anything lately.
Don't worry, I'll put something in the money. I was thinking about raising money.
Public Works.
Not a lot out of the ordinary, people should still keep running their water.
Yep.
Sand deliveries Thursday and Friday.
That's where we just put a bucket out?
Put a bucket out, yep.
Did you give an update at Public Works on the Parkview Drive apartments?
No,
Can you just briefly, yeah?
he was delivered, yesterday, did an inspection for, Houston State up as of today. So, did an inspection, he was given a letter that the exterior is not meet, occupied standards, for building code. So, he was given a letter that, mayor and council would pursue whatever legal action they have to do to, make public nuisance notice go away. He was hand delivered and then sent a certified letter. As of today, he hasn't completed all the necessary things for occupancy.
Right. Okay. Chief of Police.
We received permission from the police commission last week to experienced only part-time officers. We're down to Blaine as our only part-time officer, and Sean Reed works one shift a month, so we're in desperate need of officers, but we can't pay to train new guys, so that's why we're doing a recruitment for experienced only. And we'll get that ad out there this week on WileyNet and hopefully get some people in there that will require just familiarization and hit the ground running and start taking some shifts.
Library, joint fire, city treasurer. I'm just kidding, city clerk.
Don't skip me. I delivered to council a postcard that I just received today in the office. This postcard will be made available to every single voter in the city. Every voter that comes to vote in April will be handed this along with their I voted sticker. What I will do following that election is I will generate a list from the last November election, which is our highest our highest attended election. I will generate that list and I will compare those that voted in November that did not vote in April, and I will mail this to them. And then anyone that registers from there on will be given a postcard. This postcard discusses our new polling place for the August and November elections this year. And it also lists our new address. It states on there that the phone number is not changing, my contact is not changing. For those that are unfamiliar with the new location, if they have hesitation or they want extra assistance, I put on the card to call me, and I will do what I can to make it an easy situation for them. Even if it's curbside voting, we will do it.
Thank you. No more cookies for you.
I'm just saying,
Agenda item 8.
I don't know if I'm too old to read this or not, but I'll try. Consideration of a motion to convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute, section 19.85, paren 1, paren E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Reference developers agreement for Carl Markstead and developers agreement for Green Second North Side Edition.
That's a motion. Do we have a second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.